So I welcome you to First Aid for New Trainers. The whole focus of this program is to help new trainers, solo trainers, and accidental trainers, those subject matter experts who are put into a training capacity without any preparation. That's what this is for. So let's move on. So if you'd introduce yourself, your name, your location, your company, and how you heard about the program.
Hi, my name is Sally Anders. My location is in Wisconsin, and my company is called Real Solutions. And I learned about this program through my association with ATD. And I've never been to Deborah Laurel's sessions where I didn't learn amazing things, even though I've been a trainer for a long time. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Sally.
My pleasure.
So, quick start. What's one thing that would make this session worthwhile for you? This session is focusing on how to get past participant resistance in a classroom or virtual training.
Okay.
And you can speak it if you don't want to put it in chat.
Well, what to do with the people who've been forced to be there?
Yes, those voluntold folks.
Yeah.
All right, we'll definitely look at that. So how many of you have participants who are openly resistant to your training program? Have you ever experienced that?
Absolutely.
And how many of you would like to lower that resistance? That is a rhetorical question.
Yes, it is.
So a little bit about me. I've designed and delivered skill building training programs for over 35 years on a national and international basis. And I've trained and certified trainers in the US, Kenya, Nigeria, Zambia, Croatia, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates.
Impressed.
So thank you. So the first thing that we're going to look at in order to discuss where that resistance comes from is transfer. Everything we teach is to achieve transfer. And all that means is we take what the learner already knows and builds on it. So we are not approaching learners as if they were empty vessels with no experience and no feelings about those experiences. We're recognizing that they bring them into the classroom or virtual classroom, and they can affect how well they learn. So let's look at an example of positive transfer. Do you know what the tallest mountain in Japan is?
I know the most famous one is Mount Fuji.
There you go, Mount Fuji. Do you know how tall it is?
No.
Oh, but see, you do. How many months are there in a year?
12.
How many days are there in a year?
365.
Mount Fujiyama at one point, I don't think still now, but at one point was 12,365 feet.
Ah, nice.
Now that's an example of positive transfer where we take two things that people know very, very well and put them into a new relationship. That's where learning something new based on something people already know makes it so much easier. But we have a difficulty with negative transfer. And I want to prove that to you. I'm going to flash a list on the screen. Your challenge, if you choose to accept it, is to write down as many of the words as possible from 1 to 10. Do you have something to write with?
I do.
Okay, let me know when you're ready.
But I'm the slowest reader in the world, so go.
All right. On your mark, get set, go. Have you written down as many as you can remember?
Pretty much.
Okay, why don't you read them off? What was the first one?
I don't know. I just noticed that there was coat, sweater, hat, and gloves. I don't know what else was on there because I only saw 6 words in the first place. So
Well, you did perfectly. You're not helping prove my point in any way, shape, or form. I should have known. I should have known.
Oh,
What
wow.
very often happens is people glance down. They see, we don't usually say tie shirt. We usually say shirt and tie. We don't
Mhm.
usually say socks and shoes. We usually say shoes and socks. And so the mind goes down there, glances, and then doesn't trust what it sees anywhere else. And so very often groups will get coat and they'll get sweater, but by the time we get to 3, it's either tie, gloves, shirt, hat. There's some great confusion because what's going on is negative transfer. We are either thinking, well, okay, is it how men put their clothes on or how men take their clothes off? I mean, what's external, what's internal? And that gets in the way. So we have to be very aware that when we make changes, that we make them clear to people so they don't get confused. If I'd given you a little bit more time and you had gotten down to shirt and tie, socks and shoes, if I had warned you that for our purposes, it was going to be tie, shirt, and socks, shoes, that would have increased the probability that you would have gotten them correct. But without doing that, negative transfer, something we've learned that can get in the way of learning, can get in the way.
Mhm.
So if we want to set the stage for positive transfer, we need to look at what past experiences can help participants want to learn about a topic, what probable past experiences can keep them from wanting to learn, and then what learning activities can we use to increase positive transfer and decrease or disconnect negative transfer. Because if I haven't made it clear, negative transfer is what's causing that resistance. So for example, we take the topic of a policy change or a procedure change, which many of us experience.
Mhm.
What would probable past experiences be that would help them want to learn about the topic?
I would think, I don't know how to think like other people. I have kind of a crazy brain, but I would think that if you had some experience with a new procedure that went well, that would help you to look forward to this and have hope that this might be good.
Absolutely.
Or if you felt like you were going to have some kind of input to it, I think that might help too.
Could give them a real positive feeling about that.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. So if they had had a past experience with a policy change where they were allowed to have input, where it ended up being for the better, where if there were concerns, there was a lot of support to assist people through that change, then those would be past experiences that might help them want to learn about the topic.
Mm-hmm.
What could keep them from wanting to learn about the topic?
I definitely think the edict type transfer where the bosses come and they say, okay, we're gonna do it this way now. So you're gonna have to do XYZ, and there's no give and take, and there's no procedure to learn the new procedure, or maybe their idea of learning the new procedure doesn't make sense to me.
What could be very well, any of those would apply. So the being voluntold they've got to learn it in the past was not a very comfortable experience, and they're assuming that that's how they're going to be handled in this situation. In the past, not having had any input, expecting that that's going to be the case here. Let's see, what else? Just being against change. Change is disruptive, it's uncomfortable. If I've been doing something a certain way and I'm successful that way, I may really worry that I'm not going to be successful if something changes.
Yes.
So when we look at this, what comes out for me typically is, if there are probable past experiences that can keep them from wanting to learn about this topic, I've got to disconnect that negative transfer.
Right.
So what learning activities could we use if we're the ones responsible for teaching this policy change?
You want me to answer these questions, all of them?
You don't have to.
No, I just, this is just so interesting, because that's so important to training. And I think that number one is to get them involved, sharing what they feel about it, good or bad, that they can see that it's going to be positive, or they can see that it's going to be negative, or we did this 2 years ago and then now we're starting over again. But I think when people are heard, it helps to decrease those negative transfers.
Absolutely. What we don't want to say to people is, you don't have a right to those feelings, and those feelings are wrong.
Right.
So if we say, okay, how many of you aren't looking forward to this change? Raise your hand. Okay, let's take 10 minutes and identify why. Work in your small group and put it on a flip chart. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that idea of being heard also answers the feelings of people who are in the training, who know something and they don't think you do.
Yes.
They might think, well, you don't know about this barrier, or you don't know about that barrier. And for them to be able to voice that at least gives them the comfort that, okay, well, now they know, so
The information is out there.
right.
Now, I need to say, it's really important as a trainer to have identified these things beforehand, so that you go in and you're not blindsided.
Right.
You need to do your research, because once they have identified what the issues are, you want to be able to look at each one of them and say, this is a valid concern. This is how we're addressing it. This is a concern that we didn't consider, and I will bring that back to the powers that be, so that their concerns are validated and they can relax, because, as you said, the information is out there, and also this is I just realized I wasn't looking at the camera and I lost my train of thought. It's just important. Let's just put it that way. So giving them some timed venting.
Mhm.
There is an oral relay you can have them do. You can have half the group write down their concerns, write down 2 or 3 concerns. Have the other half of the group write down what would make this a good thing, because people will devil's advocate.
Mhm.
And then you have them stand up in parallel line to each other, and you have you have to make sure that the last person who speaks is going to speak a positive. But if we were facing each other, I might say, Sally, one reason I'm against this is X. And you would say, well, Deb, one reason I'm for that is Y. And we
Mhm.
go down, going back and forth between the people in the parallel lines until we get to the end. So it gives people a chance to voice what their concerns are, but also start to hear some of the positives.
Mhm.
So that's another one. Sometimes we simply have to acknowledge reality. I was doing a workshop for a state agency, and 4 young employees came in fuming. They were so angry to be there because apparently when they had gone home the night before, on their truck's windshield, they found a note telling them they were to report for this training. There was no explanation as to why. It was more of butts and seats.
Right.
And so they came in and I commiserated with them. I said, I think that's terrible. Well, let me tell you what this is about. And I do have candy, and I will make this pleasant. Can you see if this is going to be something that you will enjoy, that you will get something of value from? And they all stayed.
Mhm.
I also had a situation where everybody was busy doing one of the activities that I had assigned, except for one guy who had not opened his materials and was sitting there glaring at me with his arms crossed. Well, all it takes is one person like that to ruin the situation for everyone. So I went and tapped him on the shoulder and asked him to come out of the room with me. And I said, it appears that you don't want to be here. He said, no, I've already had this kind of training. I said, well, you don't need to stay. Well, I need to stay because I rode down with another participant in the class. Said, well, let me explain. It's a problem for me because it undercuts my authority and it makes everyone else uncomfortable. So there's a mall real close by. Maybe you could spend time there. And he said, well, would it be all right if I come and participate? And I said, absolutely. Oh, so there are different reasons why people resist. And the more that we can recognize it and validate it and not hold it against them, we have to be very careful about that. I once was doing a training, and there was a woman who kept grimacing at me. And I couldn't, for the life of me, understand what her problem was. And when that happens, it's very hard not to focus on that person, even if you've been training for a long time. So at the break, I decided I better go talk with her. And as I got closer, I overheard someone asking her about her back surgery. She hadn't been grimacing at me. She had been in pain.
Mhm.
And so I asked her, would it be helpful if she could put her leg up and stuff like that? And so we worked out a more comfortable way for her to sit in the class. But if I had simply taken it personally, I might have responded very differently. So we really have to find out what's going on. So I have these thoughts about how to get past participant resistance. I mentioned the oral relay, where one half is identifying what the pros are and one half is identifying what the cons are, and they take turns in parallel lines speaking those out. You can ask them, what are the benefits? Because they will devil's advocate, and they may come up with good ideas about what it is that's going to happen that will be for the best. You can ask them, what are the consequences if we don't make this change? What are the possible consequences? You can ask for their concerns, which is kind of goes along with their timed venting. You can point out past positives. In the past, last year we rolled out this change. And if you recall, we provided support and we did thus and so, and we plan to do that very same thing this time around. Provide a reality check. I was once doing training regarding a compensation study that had left a number of employees unhappy. They didn't get the raise that they wanted to get, and they were out to kill the messenger.
Mm.
And so I had to stop and say, okay, the reality is that the compensation study's done. This is what happened. This is why. But let's talk about what workarounds you might have. So we were able to have a discussion about that. I was also doing a training for about 150 folks, and it was about team building. And I had them going through a list of what constituted an effective training, team. What were the characteristics? And somebody in the middle, and by God, it's always somebody in the middle, said, well, none of these apply here. And the place broke out into lots of yelling and talking. And I watched management slowly leaving on the side door. So I said, okay, we're going to take a break. And then I got pieces of flip chart paper and put one on each of the tables with markers. And when people came back, I said, okay, we're going to take 10 minutes. I'd like your constructive recommendations on what this organization needs to do so those team characteristics are in place. And I promised to take what they had written, collate it, and bring it to management. I couldn't guarantee that something would happen with it, but that was better than nothing. And we were then able to get back to talking about teams. At the very least, play calming music. There are lots of studies have been done about the value of music and how it can calm the savage beast. And it helps to have something playing, even subliminally, where people can't necessarily catch it entirely, but it can change the atmosphere. And I have found that handing out candy always is a winner. Anything else, Sally, that you would think of to get past participant resistance?
Well, one of the things that I've done in the past is to send people emails and tell them that I want this to be valuable to everybody in the room. Because we used to have rooms for this. and that I had 5 older brothers, and they used to say to me, "You think you're so smart," and then they'd present something, and then I would explain it to them, and so they really did believe I was smart. So I gave them permission to ask me, "You think you're so smart, what would you do about XYZ?" And most of my training is about good, high quality communication. And they were all wildly familiar. If you think you're so smart, what would you do about so-and-so does, you know? And they were always confidential. I never said, Deb said we should do something with Susan. But that added a little bit of playfulness right from the start, you know, it was even before, this was before the class. And so some of them would come a little bit more open because they were going to take me down, but they didn't. So I found that to be very, very effective.
So
and very
you
similar.
send emails before the training? Is that
I
what
would
we're
send the
talking?
emails before the training, and I would, you know, I mean, we had an expectation of learning certain things because of a reason. We're going to learn to communicate better because there is some kind of a change going on, or something happening in the company that everybody needs to address. And if they can address it with open, honest communication, and people aren't getting angry and so on, it goes much better. And so they would come in with the attitude of, "Oh boy, lady, you're in over your head. we're gonna tear you apart." But because I was calm, because I was prepared, because so many of them sent me their wishes, I kind of had an idea of what was going on. And generally, if you address one of them and put them away, you know what I mean? Everybody, you know, the person who is so angry or so sure that there was no answer to this problem, you know, you just get one of those straight, and then the rest of them lean in.
Okay, so pre-training, finding out what their concerns are or their wishes are.
Well, again, inviting them to challenge me.
Ah,
You know,
okay. You were spoiling for a
I
fun.
actually used the phrase, "If you think you're so smart, what would you do about XYZ?" And they would send it to me. I was astounded how many sent them to me.
What would you wouldn't say you think you're so smart. What would you say in that email?
Oh, that's what I said.
You said that?
Yes, I would send an email that would tell them that I had 5 older brothers, and they all thought that I thought I was very smart. And so they would constantly say that to me. "If you think you're so smart, what do you know about XYZ?" And I would tell them, "I know this, that, and the next thing." And so I would challenge them. "Okay, so this is what we're going to do. If you have some kind of a communication issue, no names, please, but just tell me what the situation is, and I will confidentially address it during the session."
Ah,
And
okay.
I did. But you know, I was teaching communication, how to, you know, whatever way we were using it, whether we were using it for team building or a process change, or the company was going through something big and they needed everybody on board. You know, it's pretty standard stuff of just like I said. And I think the other thing that this did is it allowed them to be heard.
Mhm.
And again, it added a little bit of fun, and that always kind of breaks down the the barriers.
It showed you were very approachable.
Yes. And the fact that I have white hair helps too. Because when your hair is this white, they think, damn, she must know a lot. She has a lot of wisdom. And then
Which is
speaking of
true.
wisdom, that's another thing that I think is important, is that people understand that we are going to tap into the wisdom in the room. Because I absolutely am not the be all, end all, know all. I know there's many people in the room who know more than I do. And I want that. I want them to share.
Yeah, I often start training by saying the collective expertise in this room far exceeds mine.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
please tell me when what I'm saying is wrong, and please participate and make this your own.
Yes.
Yes. And it's not fake humility on either of our parts. I mean,
No, it's not. I mean, I did some training for some airlines, and they believed that nobody could train pilots except other pilots, because nobody understood what it's like to sit in a captain's seat and have everybody's life in his hands. And they were all his in those days. And it was like, if somebody is training you how to be a better pilot, I get that. But if somebody's training you to communicate better with your crew, I don't think that has to be a pilot. I think that has to be somebody who knows something about communication. And so understanding, again, I couldn't tell them how to be better pilots, but I could certainly tell them how to communicate more effectively so that everybody who had a job on that plane could do it to their best ability.
oh, that's
One of
marvelous.
the most horrible plane crashes in the history of the world was because of poor communication. 2 747s hit each other. And it was, the black box said, it was a horrible thing to listen to, but it was true. If they had been taught better communication in the cockpit, it would have never happened.
That's kind of, I don't know what I
Well,
was.
that's what brought them to me. I mean, there were too many things like that. And anyway.
Well, see, that's again gets to a reality check that sometimes
Yes.
when people are resistant, bringing in clippings from newspapers regarding incidents, particularly safety issues, can get people to pay attention.
And for many years, in the operating room, the doctor's word was law. In the cockpit, the captain's word was law, even if the captain was wrong, even if the doctor was wrong. And whenever you have a situation where you have someone who has all of the power, mistakes can happen, because we all can lose track of what should be done right now, right this very second. And if you have someone who can just very kindly say, should I, or did you mean to, or, we are not cleared to take off. And when you have someone who has all the power, you have people who are afraid to say those things, to the hurt of everybody. So
When I was first starting out as a trainer, I taught assertiveness, and first women came to learn to be more assertive. Then nurses came to learn to be more assertive, bless their hearts. And then the doctors came because they needed to know how to deal with the assertive nurses. Yeah.
They also have to know the line between assertive and aggressive.
which is a
Because
whole nother,
assertive can be extremely helpful. Aggressive, not usually.
assertive is simply practical problem solving
Exactly.
without hurting.
Open, honest communication, asking questions, questioning. Okay, you said this, what about that? You know, so that people can actually discuss something.
All right. So oral relay, asking for the benefits, the consequences, or their concerns, giving them time venting, pointing out past positives, providing a reality check, playing calming music, handing out candy, and as Sally has talked about, having a pre-training email that really encourages them to raise whatever concerns and issues that they have. So thank you for that. So I don't know, do you have any questions regarding training, regarding what we were talking about? You're under no obligation.
No, I was just gonna say that I think one issue that's important is that, like you said, you did training for the state, is that whoever hires you to do the training is also responsible for some of the preparation. So people come with a more positive attitude, so that they understand why they're going to be there, and that they also understand, you know, that maybe some of these things that they're going to learn are going to help them in their personal life as well. And I think that's another issue that I think is important. And I just read something, I think today, maybe yesterday. No, it was earlier than that. But in any case, very recently, that one of the main reasons that people are leaving companies now is because of a lack of growth. People want training. They want to grow in their professions. They want to grow in their work. And so the training needs to be part of the whole, you know, the whole package.
Absolutely. It's no longer okay for training to be an isolated event.
Yeah, and it's no longer okay for it to be negative. You've got to go to this training. I mean, that is just ridiculous. Do a little sales work here. You get to go to this training.
Well, I think one of the problems that brings up negative transfer is that in many situations, in the past at least, and I hope it isn't continuing now, training was thrown at personnel problems when managers didn't want to do what they were supposed to do.
Well, and
So
when
the employee isn't
know what they were
performing well,
because they weren't trained.
That's exactly right. But it gave training a really bad name. And also another reason why I do this program is that when people are new to training, it's very easy for them to fall into lecture and to lecture for a long time. And we know that people don't necessarily learn from lecture. It only helps build information or knowledge. It doesn't build skills. It's very passive for folks. And
well, and not only that, but it doesn't do the transfer of information. It's sort of like a brain dump, and people pick up some of it, but they certainly don't pick up all of it, because it's been the go-to in our society, you know, since they started schools.
Right.
So,
and then you have participants saying it was so boring.
Yes.
Got a headache. And I don't remember any of that stuff.
Exactly.
So
that also
just to get back to what I was saying about it not being an isolated event, I
Mhm.
want to reinforce what you were saying, Sally, about how important it is for managers to be part of the training plan. That you're
Absolutely.
not training in a vacuum. We're
Right.
building skills or changing attitudes for a reason. And those reasons have to do with how successful and effective people will be on their jobs and how well they'll serve their public or their clients. And so
Absolutely.
managers need to sit down with employees to say, this is why we're having this training. This is what I want you to get out of it. And then afterwards, to hold them accountable.
Right.
What did you get out of it? Let's make an action plan to put into practice what you have learned and to follow up,
Right.
because the trainers aren't in a position to follow up. That's really the manager's responsibility.
And also to appreciate it when they see someone actually utilizing the training,
Yes.
because that's generally what they have done in the past. Is that's one of the questions that I ask when I go into a place. What other kind of trainings have you done before this? And in many companies I see they've done team building, they've done team building, they've done team building. They keep doing it every year. And it's like, well, and it never sticks, and nobody ever says, like you said, they're not following up on it. They're just presenting it, ta-da, we're done. And then it doesn't work, and then it takes them about a year to work up again to say, all right, we've got to do something about this. And so that is part of what we have to make sure as the consultants when we go in, to let them know that the training doesn't end like that, that there is the follow-up. And then the other thing is, with Zoom training now, it's much more modular than it used to be. And as we both know, Deb, that's so much better. Do a little bit of training, go back and play with it for a while at work, come back and do some more. And that's so much more effective. So I think that not all the changes that were made from COVID were bad.
No, certainly we're showing that right now.
Absolutely.
This program. I think another reason, not a reason, another reason why there is resistance to training is because a lot of training programs aren't very good.
Oh, absolutely. And a
They're-
lot of trainers don't know how to train. And
yes.
that's another part of it. I had a young man tell me he was so proud of himself. He put this program together, and his question was to his audience: is the water good for the house when the house is on fire? And what? And he was so proud of himself. Is the water good for the house? And when a house is on fire, the firemen come and I said, well, it puts the fire out. And he said, but is it good for the house? And what he was looking for was no. And I said, John, when you're presenting, you do not want to show your audience how smart you are. You want to show your participants, you want them nodding with you. Yes, I agree with that. Yes, oh, I know the answer to that. Yes, absolutely, that's right. And he was just crushed because he wanted to be the center of attention, and he wanted to be the smartest person in the room and show people that they didn't know anything. And I mean, that's just sad. Nobody wants to be told by someone in front of the room, look how dumb you are. You don't know this.
And they also don't want to be told what they already know.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the most important things that you said today, is building on the knowledge that people already have. And that makes it so much easier for people to remember. and it makes it more fun. It builds everybody's confidence. And by the way, I had a person in a class that like you described, arms folded, feet out, ankle bracelet, complimentary of the county. And he wasn't one bit interested if you looked at him. But again, I said I had 5 older brothers. I had probably 3 like that. So it didn't bother me in the least. But when I got done, I was leaving, and guess who was in the hallway between me and the door? It was him. And I walked up to him and I said, well, goodbye. It was nice to have you in the class today. And he said, well, thank you for finally making one of these things worth my while.
Mm. Yes. So
But
we started by focusing on why people might resist the negative transfer. And there's a perfect example of someone whose past experience with training was not pleasant and was not useful. And it took good training for him to see that it's possible that you can learn something and it can be enjoyable.
well, and also I did something for him, because we were talking about conversations between employees and their managers. And these were factory workers. And I said to him, what would you say to your manager if he said whatever? Because somebody had said my manager said whatever to me. And I called on him, and he didn't raise his hand. And he said something to the effect of, I told him to something or other. And then I had a very large classroom, and they all went, ooh. And I said, wait a minute. I said, but you and your manager have the agreement to talk to each other like that, don't you? And he said, yes, we do. But I said, but you wouldn't talk to me like that. He said, absolutely not. And I said, so yeah, that makes absolute sense what he said, because that's how they work where he works. And I think that's what turned him around, is I didn't say, how dare you speak like that? And again, that's because I have experience with people who work in those types of situations. So it wasn't offensive to me. I know that's how they talk.
So validating.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that to sum up what we've been talking about and the focus of today's session, if we're going to get past resistance, we have to know where it comes from. And if we don't know, we need to ask.
Yep.
And once we ask, we need to validate rather than judge. And then adjust. There are a number of activities that we can do, and the focus is always on good design, good training decisions, helping people build skills or change attitudes through activities that help them discover the answers for themselves. Our next week's topic, if I can get to it here, is how to get participants to actively participate in virtual programs. So it's not necessarily that they're resistant, but they're definitely often distracted. And what we need is to know how to engage them. And that may or may not mean having them on camera. And it may or may not mean having them always answering in chat. So that's what we'll look at next week. Sally, I want to thank you so much for coming. You have made this a very rich conversation, and I really appreciate that.
Well, again, Deb, it's my pleasure. And again, I learned something new. So everybody wins here.
All right. Okay, well, thank you. You have a
Okay,
great
thank
rest
you.
of the day.